Okay, so before we get into the, how to of marketing, we've got to go over some mindset stuff first and how you think about it. Because what I've noticed during my journey so far as a business consultant is people come to me and they're like, Dan, I don't know how to market myself or what's the best tactic or what's this or that. And it's really not about the know-how. Obviously, you're going to learn that here, but I could tell them exactly what to do and they won't do it because it's how they're thinking about it. They have hang-ups about marketing. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. All right. So, marketing simply makes more people aware that you exist. That's it. Simple. I like to keep things nice and simple. Simple concept. Why is it necessary? It just makes more people aware that you even exist. Because when people come to me, a lot of times, especially guys that have been in the game for a while that have credits and all this kind of stuff, and their offer's good and their brand's good, and it's just simply that not enough people know that they even exist. That's why they're not hitting their numbers. That's why they're not landing as many clients as they want to, or things are really up and down. There's just not enough people that know that they exist. So that's the problem that they have to solve. Okay. And to me, like, it isn't about flashy tactics or hacks or anything like that. There's a time and a place for tactics and things like that. And we'll chat about that. But those change, those change. Marketing and being good at it, it's really a skill of being able to connect with the right people and to do it at scale. A lot of producers tell me, well, Dan, when I'm in the room with a potential client, like, it goes great. Like, they get to know me and I get to know them and provide value, and I land the project every time if I'm in the room with them. Well, marketing allows you to do the same thing just to more people at once. And it's cool. And if you know how to do that and do it authentically, then it won't matter like what platform or tactic or whatever, because all that's gonna change over time. It's gonna constantly change, and it won't matter. You don't want to just rely on being good at a tactic. You got to learn the skill of just being able to connect with the right people and do it at scale. That's all marketing is, and the best part, it's really just kind of being yourself, which we'll talk about because a lot of people think that it's something else. So let's first talk about kind of the old way, because let's face it, marketing yourself, it's not super common in our industry. As we were coming up and seeing people, do well, it was just, or it's the most common advice you hear. It's, hey, it's all based on word of mouth. Just put your head down and do good work and people will talk about you. And word of mouth is great. I mean, I agree that it's the best form of free marketing, if you will. But we can't really track it. It's hard to measure, and it's, to me, just a byproduct of doing a good job. Like, if you do a good job, that word of mouth is going to happen anyway. But what's cool now is that we have a lot of tools at our disposal, and we're able to connect with people in new ways, and it makes it just this whole new world of how we can connect with clients. We don't have to sit around and wait for other people to talk about us. I mean, doesn't it make more sense to, what if we could get more people to talk about you? Well, that's what word of mouth, or I'm sorry, that's what good marketing does. The more clients you have coming in on the front end, the more that are going to be talking about you on the back end. But just relying on word of mouth, in most cases, for you guys specifically who are independent producers, mixers, building your own business, I'm not saying that people can't make it on word of mouth alone. It happens all the time, especially if people are going the more traditional route and it's very relationship and network driven. That's totally cool. But when we're building a business independently and you want to land, great clients and as many of them as possible and build your business, then this is a big piece of it. Okay. The reason I don't like just relying on word of mouth is that it's just kind of vulnerable. We don't have a lot of control over it. I mean, there's a reason why big companies, that have great products that people talk about, like an iPhone or something. There's a reason they still do marketing and not just rely on people talking about their products. It gives them more leverage. Sometimes their product can beat out another just because they're able to get it in front of more people. You know, Hell, I'll be honest, as much as I'd love to say every client that chose us and my production company is because they just loved us better than everyone else, sometimes they hired us because honestly, we were the first ones they found and it seemed like a good fit. And they're like, yeah, why not? Let me have a call with them. And then it went well and we were a fit and it worked. And then they became a client for life. That happens because we had the leverage. We were out there enough to where people could find us often. Big companies market because it gives them more control. It's more predictable. Like imagine if you know that there are a couple of things that you can do that will lead to a client and you've figured out, you've dialed that in for yourself and you're able to make that work. Why would you not do that? I think a lot of people that just rely on word of mouth or say that's the only way or whatever, they just either never tried other ways or they were never able to make other ways work. So they just assume that it doesn't work. But I'm pretty sure that if you talk to anybody and told them, hey, if I gave you a way that you could predictably bring in clients by doing X, Y, and Z, would you do it? They'd be like, hell yeah, why wouldn't I? I'd have more control, which leads to more consistency in my business. Okay? And it leads to more word of mouth, Again, the more clients we have coming in on the front end, the more that are talking about us on the back end. Also, there's an element of, I'm going to go a little conspiracy theory here, but I think it's interesting and I think it's viable. We got to plan for the future, right? Like relationships and word of mouth is extremely important, but I think that it's a bit overvalued. Okay? Because there's just been evidence in other industries, and of course in our own bubble, we want to say, oh, well, that'll never happen to us, and it may never, but let's assume it does, okay? Like, look what happened to Main Street businesses in small towns when Walmart and Amazon innovated new ways to shop that were more convenient. It's like, well, Bob, who owned the sporting goods store, he did everything right. He built relationships. There was word of mouth. I mean, he was the guy in town, but it still wasn't enough when a new, faster, cheaper way came about, And right now, there are companies working on technology to try to put you out of business. And I don't mean that to be scary or anything, but it's just we got to look at the reality of it. There are AI beat making things right now. I'm not going to plug them, but they exist right now. If you want to know who they are, you can ask me. I think it's interesting. And will that ever, completely replace producers? Probably not. But I like to look at leverage because if the sophistication of music production goes down and people are like, yeah, cool, that this thing can crank out a beat that's dope enough for me to make a hit with, then I don't care how good your relationships and word of mouth is. If something else just makes more sense, they're going to go with that. So I think it's not a black and white thing, right? Relationships and word of mouth are extremely important, but I just try to not overvalue that stuff and kind of see it for what it is. But also, hey, if we can get more leverage by marketing ourselves and have more people know about us and give us more brand power, then why would we not do that, even as an independent producer? Again, my background is coming from the business world first into the music industry, and it's just like the music industry wants to think that it's just so different, and there's a lot that isn't different. So just another kind of interesting point there. One thing that I want you to note is this is something I try to drive into the heads of my consulting clients as much as possible, and so take this seriously. Right now is the best time to market yourself. From here on out, it'll never get any easier. It will only get harder and more saturated. So people are like waiting for the right time, or they're getting caught up in like, well, it's not really like the cool thing to do, but the problem is once it actually becomes a thing and it's normal, there's a lot of things in the music industry that 15 years ago weren't normal, and people are like, oh no, that's weird, don't do that. And now they're normal. And look what happened. Hey, here's an example. The beat leasing thing, the beat licensing thing. In the beginning, that was weird. That was, internet guys created that, not the music industry. People are like, oh, that's weird. That's, I don't know. How does that work? That's different. Or we're unsure about it. I remember this. I was doing stuff back in the early 2000s. It was weird. I didn't even mess with it. I was like, I don't know what they're doing. And then look at it now. Everybody and their mom does it. But the guys that really actually made a bunch of money are the guys who were in early doing it. Guys and gals that were in early doing it. So right now, it's just, I really want to drive that point home. It's the best time. So all this time that you're delaying it or being like, oh, I'm not sure if it's cool or should I do this or what, you're screwing yourself. Because when it's more normal in 2-3 years when everyone's doing it, it's like you missed your boat. So right now is the best time to start marketing yourself. It will never get better. Starting tomorrow and the day after, each day it gets less, it gets harder to do. Okay, so don't delay. That's the point. People are letting things get into their head that are preventing them from doing stuff, and they're going to screw themselves because then it's going to be too late. Because you can at least get leverage and then jump to the next thing. Like how my production company marketed themselves 2 years ago versus 6 years ago. Very different. Some of those things died out, but we were able to build enough leverage to move on to the next thing and learn the skill. And I'm glad we did it because we still have assets out there. By assets, I just mean different pieces of content and things. Like we haven't touched on, not bragging about this, and I don't recommend it, but just because of my direction moving to consulting, we haven't really done any advertising for my production company in 2 to 3 years, and we still get more than 20 leads a month. 20 people that want a lead, just someone that wants to, it's kind of a clinical term, but just people that want to work with us. 20 people that want to work with us a month because we started early and we put so much into it and we doubled down on it back, 6 years ago. So obviously if something's working, don't stop like we did, but that's just because I switched, put my focus into other things, but that's the power of it. If we were starting now, it'd be tougher than it was 6 years ago, so start now. Don't think about it for another year or something. So what holds people back? Producers, mixers, what holds people back with marketing? We're one of the only industries where marketing yourself is, kind of seen as uncool, or weird or not normal. Because for the most of the guys that we look up to, it doesn't seem like they're marketing themselves, although really behind the scenes, they have someone else marketing them, someone's marketing them. They play in a competitive field too, and you're in the top 1%. So all your heroes that you look up to, someone's marketing them. They have a manager, agent, something like that. But in the beginning, or when you're an independent business, you have to do all that for yourself, right? So when it's you that has to do it for yourself, it's all of a sudden seen as uncool. And I think because deep down, everyone wants to be that just mysterious genius who has artists banging down their doors to work with them. They don't want to have to market themselves. They feel if I have to market myself, then it must mean I'm not good enough. It's seen as if you have to market yourself, then it must mean that you are hurting for work. It's just a funky little thing in our industry. That's not true. I mean, sometimes it could be true, but that's just people. People like to judge people for doing things, especially when they do things different. But marketing yourself doesn't mean that you're hurting for work. It's actually putting yourself in a position so that you don't ever have to be hurting for work. When people talk about like, oh, I had, these big waves in my business, it's really up and down, all this stuff that's been normalized in our industry, like, oh yeah, well, you got to prepare for the slow seasons and it's really up and down. Well, yeah, if you only rely on word of mouth and you have no control over getting new clients, then yeah, it's going to be up and down. But I don't know what they're talking about. And I think it was like 3 years into running my production team where I realized that other people dealt with that was normalized. I'd have buddies say like, yeah, no, we're shutting down. There's never work in December. It's like, end of the year. It's like, we're fucking slammed. Like, we're trying to rush to get this done so we can go home and see our families. Like, there was never a slow period ever in my production company. I know that sounds crazy to some of y'all. And again, I'm not saying this to be braggy or anything, just from a clinical point of view. It was always busy, because there were always things out there bringing in new clients. But it's just been normalized that it's up and down, but it doesn't have to be that way. By marketing yourself, it doesn't mean that you're hurting for work. It means that you're putting yourself in a position so that you don't ever have to be hurting for work. If someone doesn't have work, if you're watching this, you don't have work today, this month, you don't have a lot going on, that's a direct cause of what you didn't do 3 to 6 months ago. So that's the cool thing about it. Now, be prepared, because this is real. You're gonna get shit for it. It's not a normal thing yet to market yourself. So, you're gonna get shit for doing it and putting yourself out there. Think about it. Anybody that puts themselves out there, people push back. I don't know why. I'm not a psychologist. Doesn't matter to me why. But what's funny about the music industry, and I'm sure some other industries are like this, but just one of the things I've noticed that's been a trend is, on one hand, the music industry or people in music, they're like, oh yeah, you gotta, really do things your own way, be creative, think outside of the box. But at the same time, they'll say, well, no, don't do that. That's not how it's done. And I always got a chuckle out of that. I'm like, so which one is it? No one wants to like back up your way of doing things until it works, and then they'll ask you about it. They'll be all about it. Everyone that I know, all my clients who have done really well, Mark, and Austin Hall, and my company, and Adam R, and all these guys got shit for it in the beginning. Like some of y'all that know Austin Hall, make pop music and all that stuff, you see him now and people are all about his shit and love it, and he's crushing it and doing well into the six figures, and has an incredible business for himself just 3 years into his career at 25 years old. But it wasn't always that way, man. People definitely talk shit, especially in the beginning. Who is this kid thinking he can do this, that, and he's cheesy, or he's this or whatever. Like, he didn't care. He pushed through it, because no one thinks it's cool until it starts working, and all that matters is you. You've got to ignore that stuff, because at the end of the day, no one cares about you getting work except for you. It's up to you to get your work, and if you are getting work and you're crushing it and you're serving your clients, doesn't matter what anybody thinks. Okay? Because they're just trying to get their own clients. It's a highly desperate business, although people are good at not making themselves look that way and that everything is great on the surface. The nature of my job is I get to see behind the curtains of a lot of these, and I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm highly empathetic. I get it. It's my job. I love doing this. I love fixing that. But most people that you think are that are crushing it, a lot of them aren't. People that you think should be aren't behind the scenes. So just know that everyone's trying to figure this out and do their own thing. And at the end of the day, they're just trying to get work for themselves and support their families. You need to do the same. Okay? Trying to impress colleagues or play the too cool for school thing, that's just high school stuff. Build your business. Don't worry about what other people think about you doing it. Focus, build your thing. All right, so let's go through some of the major kind of mindset points for marketing yourself. Just things that I feel people should know before they dive into the process, commonalities. Some of them I've already kind of talked about, but I'm sure I'll be able to ramble more about it. But commonalities that come up, with the guys that I'm working with. Because again, you're going to be surprised when we actually dive into this process. You're maybe going through this video right now and be like, all right, yeah, whatever, Dan, let's get to it. I'm excited. But then you're going to have to actually go out, show up, and perform, and you're going to be fucking terrified. Like, There's so much of this is mindset stuff versus how to and tactics. Okay. But I want to just reframe how you think, because a lot of people go into marketing with these preconceived ideas, because they see marketing as like a TV commercial or an infomercial or billboards or all that stuff. And all that stuff technically is, marketing, advertising. But it's funny because I'll have consulting clients, they create their first piece of content or whatever it is. And I like read it or watch it if it's a video, whatever format it is. And I'm like, this isn't you at all. What is this? This doesn't sound like you talking. And it's like, that's just because they think that's what marketing is. And we actually have to just chip away at what they think it is. And then what is left is just them being them damn selves and showing up. And it's a really cool process. So it's not adding stuff. It's actually more chipping away. So they think that once you get on the internet, the whole world changes. You have to be different and all this shit. It's like, nah, you can still be you. That's what works. It's no different from you sitting in the room with people, So the first thing I want to say is marketing isn't supposed to be all about me, 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 me. A lot of people are hesitant because they're like, Dan, I just don't want to fucking talk about myself and promote my stuff. It doesn't feel right. It feels icky. It's like, well, that's because you're thinking about it for you. You're thinking about what you're going to get out of it. I don't make content for me. Like when I come out and make free content for people, my goal, my mindset going into it is, hey, what's the best way for people to get to know me and what I do? It's to make it not about me and to make it 100% on how can I like help them provide value. And it's a key, it's a big term you hear all the time. We'll talk more about that later. It's kind of a cliche word, but really that's what it's about them. It's about whoever your audience is. How can I put goodwill into the marketplace so that people can't ignore? That's what Austin did. He created this community, and it was about making something so badass for people that they couldn't ignore that he existed. So sure, at the end of the day, we're transparent. You don't have to be secretive or weird, or people know that you're trying to build a business and connect with people, and who cares? People that have a problem with that are not going to be ideal clients. You're setting a good example for the artists you're working with by showing up and providing value in marketing, because that's what you would tell them to do as an artist. So you can't tell them to do that if you're not leading by example and doing that for yourself and your business. But marketing isn't about you showing off and me, 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 me. Okay? And when I show you more of the how-to stuff, you'll see in more detail why it's not about that at all. Okay? The second thing is marketing isn't supposed to be inauthentic. And I think most people think they know this, but then when they actually get into the how-to, it comes off as super inauthentic. Or maybe you see something that someone posts or a video or something, and you're like, that doesn't seem authentic. So then people get this idea in their head that like, oh, in order to market, I have to be inauthentic. And that's not true. If you see someone and they're not being, this happens to my clients all the time, especially in the beginning, where it's not that they're not authentic, they're just not good at it yet. They're not good at marketing yet. They're not good at being themselves yet. Like I said, they have to chip away at all that. They're going out thinking they know what marketing is, but they haven't refined their process. And what they ultimately learn is like, oh, I'm just going to show up and like share my thoughts or provide value or teach something or get a conversation going or create a cool resource for someone. And I'm like, yeah, that's all it is. They're like, oh shit, okay, cool. Like, yeah, that's it, man. You don't have to do anything freaking weird. If it's not like people are like, oh, I don't want to be like cheesy or salesy or anything. I'm like, cool. You know what the solution is to that? You just don't do that. That's it. Don't be salesy then. Don't be cheesy. That's up to you. You're the one making the content. But I get it. People think that it's inauthentic. Like, oh, this person's just creating this to get something for themselves. Hey, with some people, maybe they are. Maybe they are inauthentic. Maybe they're snake. There's people out there that are unfortunately really good at this skill, and they come off as very authentic, and behind the scenes, they're ripping people off. I can give you a lot of examples of those people. And that's unfortunate. Those are con men. That's different. It's about intent. So some people you may see show up in the marketplace and they're new and they're trying to market themselves and figure out how it all works. And it seems like, oh, they're being inauthentic. It's like, no, they're just not good at marketing yet. They have these veils over their head of what they think marketing are that they need to pull away. And over time, they'll learn how to do that. Okay? So it's not supposed to be inauthentic. Good marketing is authentic. Every one of you watching this has bought something because a message or content or something you connected with. Maybe you didn't buy it immediately. You started following it for a little bit. Maybe it's a person. Maybe it's a company or a thing or a band or whatever. And then ultimately you bought something. You're like, yeah, I love that. You know? Everyone has done it. Marketing is not weird. Makes the world go round. So the next thing, there is no such thing as marketing doesn't work. I hear this all the time. I tried marketing, but it didn't work. That doesn't exist. Marketing is not a thing that doesn't work. Marketing is a process of figuring out what works. So if you think that just coming in and trying a couple of things and being like, oh, well, it didn't work, I'm not going to do it, marketing doesn't work, then yeah, you're not going to get what you want out of this. There's no such thing as marketing doesn't work. It's a process of trial and error to figure out what works. Okay? So if you've heard anyone say in our industry, oh, marketing doesn't work, or that, like, well, they just didn't figure it out. It works. It works every time. It takes some people longer to get there, but it works because that's literally what marketing is, the process of fixing it and refining it and using data until it works. Next point, marketing is creative. It blows my mind that people in a creative field, audio, video, anything like that, graphic designers, have this weird thing about marketing. I'm like, isn't that what you're doing when you're producing songs? You're trying to get people to feel something. You already do marketing. You know, it's actually a very creative process. It's fun. It's like, hey, how can I provide value or get this point across or get attention to, you know, generate conversation with someone? It's the same thing you're doing like when you're producing a song for an artist. It's a very creative process. It's not, there's an analytical piece to it, but for the most part, it's not a super analytical process, at least not on the front end. You get to create stuff. It's really cool. So I find that when I tell people that, it kind of takes a little pressure off. Like, it's a creative skill. And just like every other creative skill, guitar, you know, producing tracks, mixing, other creative skills that now you're good at as you're listening to this, you're not going to start at being good at it, and then you eventually will be good at it, just like every other creative skill. So you just need to put marketing in that same category. It's like, all right, cool, it's just another creative thing that when I start out, I'm not going to be super great at, and then over time, I'm going to end up really great at it. So I already kind of mentioned this point a little bit earlier, but it's something that you got to be like prepared for, as it throws people off because they're not used to it. Most people want to stay behind the scenes and not say anything because it's safe. Then they don't have to worry about anything. But let's face it, people that have actually accomplished stuff rarely do it, you know, without getting a little pushback. So just know that whenever you show up and kind of put yourself out there and start being, you know, more active with this kind of stuff, that, you know, there are going to be people that shit on you, you know, or troll or hate or maybe even have constructive criticism you don't like or disagree with something or whatever. I mean, if you go to like Slate Audio Facebook group, even Steven Slate in his own group, when he posts something, there's comments on it that are just like, you know, that's bullshit, man, or what, you know, dude, whatever. That is a part of it. And I've noticed in I mean, dude, I get it real bad because I'm a person who talks about making money in the music industry. There's automatically a bow and arrow on me. And I get it. I have empathy because there are people out there's a lot of people that talk about this stuff that are just out there to rip people off, and people have gotten ripped off. So then that means that anybody that is talking about this and running a Facebook ad or something must be trying to rip me off. I'm empathetic to them. I get it. But I've noticed the more successful my business gets, the more of that pushback there is. So you gotta learn how to handle it and be okay with it and just be empathetic to people. It's not a big deal. You don't know what people are dealing with, or, sometimes it hurts. Sometimes I've had people that I really look up to that just totally shat on everything that I've done, and yeah, it's a bummer. But I have to look at the truth, and the truth is that I'm building a business that I love and helping people make a damn living and have the highest success rate at doing it. And it's awesome. That's the truth. But human nature is we want to focus on the bad stuff and then say, oh, well, that's bullshit, or this, or I disagree. And then you start doubting, like, oh, well, maybe I am doing something wrong, or, maybe I, shouldn't do this way, or what. Even though the truth is sitting there telling you, showing you in your face that, hey, everything is great. You're crushing it. So you can't worry about other people's stuff. You don't know what's going on in their life, what their background is. Everybody just, especially in our industry, again, with the level of desperation, and I think everybody has a little bit of uncertainty in their shit, despite what level they're on. People just want to know that their way is right. So when someone's talking about a different way or doing things a different way, sometimes other people don't like that. All right? So there's your warning. It's going to happen. Don't let it freak you out. It's all good. Focus on your stuff. Again, no one cares about you getting clients except for you. All right, next, you got to be okay with failing in public. All right? Sometimes you're going to make content and it's going to suck, or it's going to be received wrong, or, whatever. Just things can go wrong. And most people don't ever have to deal with failing in public. They're so afraid. I mean, most people are terrified of that. That's why most people don't ever accomplish what they want to accomplish. And it stings the first couple times. You're like, oh God, I look like a dope. It's a video. No one cares enough, unless you just go crazy. People are going to forget what you posted literally 10 minutes. So if something's received wrong, or it goes, if it doesn't go right, or, people just shit on you, and, it's an obvious, you took an L, whatever. I've taken a ton of L's publicly. You're like, oh, well, that was dumb. And you move on, okay? But you've got to be okay with it. And you'll build a tolerance to being like, yeah, you know what? Didn't work out. Or, hey, I said something wrong. Or, hey, that was taken the wrong way. I get it. Or, hey, I got a little heated, debating someone who was trolling my post or whatever. It happens. I've made every single one of those mistakes. You will too. And time goes on. That's it, okay? The worst thing, the only way to avoid that is to not put yourself out there and stay in the same situation that you're in. So you got to pick your poison. Okay, last point here, marketing. It's kind of a blanket statement. Obviously not everyone, but it's just kind of funny. Everyone hates it until it works, and then they become obsessed. It's one of the coolest things for me to watch with the people I consult, is they're just like, oh, marketing, I don't want to do it, And then once it works, they go through the trial and error. It's hard, you got to track things, and is this working, and what can I try? And, people, it's hard to stand out and to garner attention and build audience. But it's the same thing your clients have to go through as artists. So like, if you don't know anything about that process, I mean, do you really even deserve the client? Because they're going to have to go through that and figure that out. You should know how that works. You should at least have some experience with that. But here's what happens. people go through the tough part, and the ones that actually make it through and dial in their process and get it to work and start building a little bit of traction, start landing some clients, then they become obsessed with it. Then they love it. Then they want to, they start with, oh, Dan, I don't want to spend any time marketing. I just want to produce all day. And then by the end of it, they're like marketing pretty much all the day, most of the day, and then producing on the downtime, which obviously that's an extreme example. But all I'm saying is that people end up loving it once it starts working because they can directly correlate it to it enabling them to be able to do what they love. Just produce songs for awesome artists. So they hate it until it works, and then they love it. All right, so that's some mindset stuff around marketing. Let's dive into some how-to.